Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I just went 9-1 with the Pokemon featured on your screen, and no, you are not hallucinating. That is a Great League Roserade in the Halloween Cup. Roserade is super interesting, but also super fun to run in the Halloween Cup. It's very, very frail, and that is something that you have to keep in mind. It has a higher attack stat than both Scizor and Golurk, so definitely a Pokemon that you want to pair up with a little bit of bulk. For that bulk, we do have a Fortress and a Jellicent. If we see a fire type on lead, don't ask me what happens. We are going to lead into a Morpeko in game number 1. Morpeko is going to be able to fire off their Aura Wheel, but what I do know is it is resisted, so I should be able to hang on, but that resisted Aura Wheel, despite it being a very efficient charge attack, hits for insane amounts of damage. But what I do know as well is I should be able to outpace this Morpeko to 2 moves before they're able to do the same. They are going to build up, and now I'm going to fire off Weather Ball number 2, grabbing the second shield from the Morpeko, and now pivoting into my Fortress. I do have 2 shields here, and I am going to expend 1 because I do not want to get hit with a boosted neutral Aura Wheel. That is not on my to-do list today. Morpeko reaching for another move, but not quite able to make it. They are now down a shield. Bringing in an Azumarill into a Fortress, maybe not the best play. I'm going to fire off this Rock Tomb as soon as I can so that I can lower the damage from the Azu's bubbles, as the charge moves already aren't going to do much damage, but lowering that damage is also important. They're going to fire off an Ice Beam, likely looking to get whatever damage they can onto the Fortress as soon as they can. They're going to be at another Ice Beam here, but what I'm going to look to do now is keep energy on my Fortress. If I can keep 2 moves and then switch out into my Jellicent, there is very little the opposing trainer is going to be able to do, and they see it as they bring in their Scizor. We have too much energy. GG's. Alright, Scizor is one of the Pokemon I had in mind when picking Roserade, so let's see what the Scizor decides to do. We're going to stay in, wait a turn, make sure a Bullet Punch goes through, and we're firing off our Weather Ball immediately. Weather Ball grabs a shield from the Scizor. They are forced to throw energy here, but one thing that is very, very nice for us in this matchup is I am able to stay in, and they get the Night Slash boost, but even despite that, Roserade able to hang on just barely and get to that second Weather Ball. That second Weather Ball is going to be huge because despite the fact that this is a now boosted Scizor, we were able to peel both shields off of them, and Jellicent and Fortress may be very well able to close out this game. They're going to bring in their Dusclops, and I make a play that seems probably a bit unusual to some, but I pivot out and catch onto my Jellicent. I know they're going to throw that move immediately, so I'm very happy with just letting the Jellicent absorb that Shadow Punch. And now we're going to shield up Shadow Punch number 1, not letting our Jellicent get too low, build up to 100 energy, and CMP tide this Dusclops on their 3rd Shadow Punch. Shadow Ball will get rid of the Dusclops, and now we have some residual energy on both of our remaining Pokemon. The last Pokemon appears to be an Azumarill. I build up as much energy as I can, and this is going to be a very difficult game for me to win, all things considered. Shadow Ball number 1, I'm going for Shadow Ball number 2, and now the Azu has unfortunately for themselves played into the losing CMP tie. There may very well be life here. This should be a play rough that should get rid of the Jellicent. Jellicent does get KO'd there, but now I'm just looking to keep energy. They pivot into the Scizor, immediate Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb will dispatch the Scizor, and I think we may very well be able to make this last Rock Tomb before the Azu makes their move. Indeed we are. Rock Tomb landing onto the low health Azu. That'll be a good game. Getting into the next one, Roserade into Scizor once again. You know what? I am not too terribly upset about this lead. They attempt to catch onto their Dragalge. Dragalge going to be met with the Jellicent. Jellicent generally a pretty good response when Dragalge is running acid in this cup. They are generally going to be on Dragon Tail though. We are going to build up to the Shadow Ball just before they make a potential Outrage. Who knows? They might be on Sludge and Outrage. You never know. I am going to continue to farm up here. I don't think I need to shield this move, but it may be in my best interest to do so. It's going to be the Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb not going to be enough to KO, so we do know their moveset was Aqua Tail and Sludge Bomb there. They're going to bring in the Scizor, but I do believe that Jellicent should be able to make 2 moves here. It might be close here. We might fall just short. Unfortunately, Scizor able to get that farm down. However, this isn't the worst spot to be in as they bring in Azumarill. Oh, Azumarill has another thing coming. If it thinks that this is the matchup it wants to pivot into. Now, we are going to continue to farm up, over farming to the maximum with the Roserade. Roserade reaching for the Leaf Storm. Azu, you better shield this move up, because if you do not, you're getting one shot. And now back in comes the Scizor. Scizor, you better shield up this -2 Weather Ball Fire, because if you don't, you are getting KO'd. In the back is going to be the Fortress revealed. The Scizor down 2 shields has no hope of winning. GG's. On to the next match. It is going to be Roserade leading into a Wigglytuff. Very nice lead for us. We are going to see them immediately pivot out into a Golbat, not a Pokemon you see every day, and they are going to unfortunately be able to outpace us before we're able to make our Rock Tomb. This is a very problematic Pokemon, and unfortunately, I just let a Shadow Ball through. I'm going to fire off a Rock Tomb. This will demand a shield from the Golbat. They definitely realize that it is going to be useful in this game, so they are going to oblige with a shield. This is going to be a Poison Fang. I am not intent on shielding a Poison Fang. My switch timer is not quite yet up, and I fall about a millisecond short of being able to switch out. I bring in the Jellicent. They pivot back into that Wigglytuff, but Wigglytuff has another thing coming. If it thinks it's going to be able to contest with the Roserade, I'm going for the Weather Ball Fire. I need damage on this Wigglytuff, and I need to apply pressure. I want that final shield. If I can get that Golbat shieldless in the endgame, I should be able to get a win. Now, they double no-shield the Wigglytuff. You did see me undertap my Weather Ball Fire on alignment, the second one, and that was intentional. I didn't want them to undertap a Swift, but here, this is also intentional. I am waiting out my switch timer, so I take a few extra charms that I know aren't going to do impactful damage, and now I have a decision to make. Jellicent clicks the no-shield button. Poison Fang bait successfully called. In the back, they have a Nidoqueen. To our surprise and to our advantage, this is actually a Shadow Nidoqueen. Shadow Nidoqueen not going to appreciate that damage, and this, once again, is only a Poison Fang. I am not going to shield this move. Poison Fang is going to do some sizable damage. I do have a move loaded for the Golbat. However, this is going to be pretty difficult, as we now need to pivot into our Roserade. We just got KO'd, and now this Weather Ball Fire needs to KO this Golbat or we lose this game. Weather Ball Fire picks up the knockout. GG's. In the next game, Roserade leads into yet another Wigglytuff. They save switch into a Golisopod. I'm fired off my Weather Ball Fire immediately, either looking to pressure a shield or realistically just get some damage on the Golisopod, because now I have a very hard response in this Jellicent. And Jellicent does not need to shield any moves from this Golisopod because they're not running Shadow Claw. Because they're not running Shadow Claw, one, our HP stat is very, very high, so these Fury Cutters are doing next to nothing in the grand scheme of things, and now I can look for a full Hex down, or I can look to throw this energy so that I don't allow the Golisopod to make a further move. I end up going for the latter, and if they bring back in the Wigglytuff, I'm just going to pivot back into the Roserade. I really don't mind, and in the back, they've got a Scizor. Scizor not going to be too happy about the fact that there is going to be a Roserade on the loose. Roserade not going to be able to make a second Weather Ball Fire here, but doesn't really need to. And now, I think I can just win this game with the energy that I have with my Jellicent, as the Scizor is going to be able to make one Night Slash, but even if they were able to make two, they are switch locked, and even with a Night Slash boost, they're not going to bullet punch down the Jellicent here, so we're going to be able to comfortably make the double surf. They are going to shield the first, but you don't have 2 shields remaining, so now this Scizor is going to go down. That shield may be to my opponent's detriment. In comes the Fortress. The Wigglytuff is battling it out. It is not going to work out for you, Wigglytuff. I've got some really bad news. They're going to fire off a move. The Icy Wind is going to connect. The Icy Wind does next to nothing as we now go for the Rock Tomb. I don't know why my opponent sees a full health bulky steel type into their Wigglytuff, and we're up a shield, and they continue to play it out, but hey, it is what it is. Let them play it out. Does not matter to me. They are going to fire off yet another Icy Wind. Fortress shrugs off that damage as it shrugs off the charm damage. 2 Icy Wind debuffs. Not enough to save the Scizor from the Bug Bite Fast Move pressure. GG's to this trainer. Get into the next one. It is going to be Roserade leading into another Morpeko. I swear I had more leads than just Morpeko and Wigglytuff, but nevertheless, building up to the Weather Ball Fire immediately and firing off the Weather Ball Fire immediately. That does a sizable amount of damage onto that Morpeko, and now I'm building up to the second Weather Ball Fire. However, we do unfortunately lose CMP to the Morpeko there, or we're going to connect for pretty substantial damage, but they weren't boosted, so those Thunder Shocks that landed may have potentially ended up doing more damage with the attack boost, but they just decide to let their Morpeko go. In comes a Mandibuzz, but we have just the Pokemon to slap onto this Mandibuzz, as it is going to be the Fortress. Fortress here, I'm very content with shielding this first move, because it would do the most amount of damage, because this Mandibuzz is 1, staying in, and 2, about to get debuffed by the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb onto the Mandibuzz. What is the response? They're going to no-shield it. They actually no-shield it, much to my surprise, and in the back they have a Jellicent. The Jellicent is up a shield, however. I am going to no-shield, as they do outpace, but only outpace with a Surf. So I can go for 2 further Bug Bites, go for this Rock Tomb, and now I'm going to try to make a pretty cheeky play here. I'm going to build up to when they get the Surf, which is 2 more Hexes. I attempt to catch, but unfortunately, I do not get the catch. Even worse for me, I don't get my Hex through, as I unfortunately mistimed the switch. That is definitely an error on my part. They attempt to catch the Surf, but I don't think this is the worst thing ever, because I have a shield, and Jellicent, although it's quicker pacing this season, is not quickly pacing enough where it's going to be able to make multiple charge moves and threaten my Jellicent. So I can just continue to go for the Hex farm down and commit to fast move pressure. We win the game, and my opponent has 2 shields that I bet they're wondering why they didn't use. Roserade into Golisopod. It is going to be a Shadow Claw Golisopod as well. I am going to catch their move onto my Jellicent. Catching this way does not allow me to get a Hex Sneak, but that isn't the worst thing ever. They bring in a Tinkaton. Tinkaton going to be able to outpace to a Play Rough, but Jellicent is very bulky and should not have to fear a Play Rough. I'm going to no-shield in case it's a Bulldoze bait, but my opponent intelligently does full send the Play Rough. Now, I'm going to retaliate with a full send of my own Shadow Ball. Tinkaton also no-shields that move as well, and the next move is going to be a CMP tie. But this is only a Bulldoze. I'm confident I'm going to be able to survive, and on 1 HP, my Jellicent hangs on. They get the defense drop, but like I said, we're on 1 HP. It simply will not matter. And now, we do win switch advantage. There is going to be a Nidoqueen in the back, but this is a problematic Pokemon. Both of my remaining 2 Pokemon aren't particularly strong into the Nidoqueen, and on top of that, it's a Shadow. That's probably worse for me, as my Fortress is pretty much effectively completely useless into the Nidoqueen, and my Roserade, as you can see, is taking massive amounts of damage from these Mud Slaps. They're going to go for the Poison Fang. The Mud Slaps are going to add up an infinite amount here, and now I'm going to go for the second Weather Ball Fire, looking to grab a shield from the Nidoqueen, and they do shield it up. I'm going to go for yet another Weather Ball Fire here, and I think here we just have to switch into the Fortress and cope. This is not at all a good situation for me, but I am just going to commit. The Nidoqueen decides to switch out. They do have some energy banked there, but I can just go for a Rock Tomb now that they brought in the Golisopod down so much energy. Golisopod gets dispatched, and now I have to shield this. If they go for the bait, I don't think they can make a nuke, so I shield up. It's the Earth Power, and Nidoqueen is going to get resisted, bug bitten down. GG's. Getting into the next one, I swear I did not see any Morpeko when playing this cup until I decided to run this team. But it is a good thing for us, so we are going to see them safe switch into a Drifblim. Drifblim on Astonish, maybe not the best thing for us to see. I am going to shield up, as it is only going to be an Icy Wind, but that damage is going to be impactful, because if they land the Icy Wind, they're going to be able to Astonish me down. They are going to, speaking of that, get nearly Hex down, but I am not going to be able to get the full Hex down. We need to live this Icy Wind, and we are able to barely live this Icy Wind. The second time in a row, this Jellicent has clutch survived, so you love to see it. Surf gonna land onto that Morpeko, but we have switch advantage. This is just a free Fortress farm, and they're going to bring in a Shadow Golbat. Hold on, Shadow Golbat, definitely not the Pokemon we were hoping to see here. Morpeko Double Flyer, definitely looking to avoid some Mud Slappers is the opposing trainer. They're going to go for the Poison Fang, a very important bait call as we go for a Sand Tomb bait. We need every advantage we can get here, and we are successfully able to get it. Now, I can pull a shield with my Rock Tomb. This could be the Shadow Ball. I have to shield this up. There is no exception. I have to shield that. they go for the Shadow Ball, and now they bring in the Morpeko. Morpeko going to be met with a Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb may very well need to be shielded by the Morpeko as they are running dangerously low on HP. They fire off a move here, and now this game is entirely in the hands of the Roserade Aura Wheel. Aura Wheel does massive amounts of damage onto the Fortress as we get dispatched there. I look to overfarm as much as I can with the Roserade. Roserade has a tall task ahead of it. It has to get rid of this remaining Morpeko health and now be able to KO the Golbat. Unfortunately here, I just think we're going to fall just short of the Weather Ball Fire KOing here. We're going to go for it. Weather Ball Fire does not KO the Golbat. They live on just about 1 health, and that is absolutely heartbreaking. But I couldn't have played that any closer because that was a CMP tie, and we did unfortunately lose that one. Alright, the other electric mouse in this cup in Dedenne has arrived. They attempt to switch out on 3. They bank 3 Thunder Shocks for later, but that's not really that much of a problem, as we're going to be able to go for a Weather Ball Fire onto the Golisopod. Now, this does misalign switch timer, but what it also does is set up a Hex farm down for my Jellicent. This puts my opponent in a devastatingly compromising position. Aqua Jet is not going to be enough damage to KO the Jellicent. Jellicent going to get nearly a full Hex through there, and now they can fire off another Aqua Jet, but it's not going to KO, so we can no-shield this one as well and look for the full Hex farm down. And at the very least, we're going to leave this matchup if they pivot out with 100 energy. In comes the Dedenne. Dedenne does sneak that Thunder Shock, but more impactfully, we get the Shadow Ball off. We live the Thunder Shock. In comes the Roserade. Roserade going to be able to fire off a Weather Ball Fire. Dedenne's worst nightmare has arrived, as it's a very glassy Pokemon, but it does fully resist the moveset, and they are going to fire off a Problematic Charge. Does not do enough damage to the Roserade. We're building up to the Leaf Storm, and it's a CMP tie. They have no shields remaining. This Leaf Storm is going to connect and fully one-shot the Dedenne. My opponent may not have appreciated that very much, as it seems they may have force closed their wrap. And yeah, that game is absolutely over. GG's. Getting into the next game, it is going to be Roserade leading into a Mandibuzz. Not at all a good lead. I am going to stay in for a moment here just to fast move check. It is going to be Air Slash, so we see the pivot into the Fortress. Mandibuzz building up quite a bit of energy here, and now they're going to fire off what can likely only be a Foul Play. I'm going to let this go. Foul Play not going to be nearly enough to pressure a shield, but what it does do is put us into Mud Slap farm down range for the incoming Nidoqueen. Not at all very good for us, but the Sand Tomb is going to grab a shield as we did build up to a potential Earthquake. I'm going for yet another Rock Tomb. They likely don't have to shield this because if you're running Sand Tomb, you're probably not running Sand Tomb and Earthquake. I go for 2 Bug Bites. I'm able to defer that Mud Slap onto my Jellicent. That should not have been how that interaction worked out, but I will certainly take it. I call a Poison Fang bait. They are going to be able to make a further move. Is this going to be another Poison Fang? No, we throw up the shield. It is going to be the Stone Edge. Definitely did not want to no-shield that one. In comes a Scizor, but Scizor down this much energy to a Jellicent is in trouble. I go for the Shadow Ball immediately. I need the damage here. They switch out of the Scizor, realizing that they called the bait at the wrong time as the Shadow Ball connects, getting the Scizor down to about 10% HP. They can't stay in that matchup for very much longer, so they have to pivot out into the Mandibuzz, but the Mandibuzz takes a Surf and gets its charge move caught onto the 1 HP Fortress. Unfortunate for my opponent, but now I'm still not necessarily in the best position versus this Mandy, but I'm just going to bring back in the Roserade. I can commit a shield here, and there's not much left for my opponent to do. They fire off the Foul Play. We are going to oblige with a shield. I'm not going to be able to get this farm down before the Scizor is going to be able to make a last-second charge move. So I'm going to fire off the Weather Ball Fire. The Weather Ball Fire goes no-shielded by the Scizor. They may have wanted that energy, but I'm going to go for yet another Weather Ball Fire. They shield up the Mandibuzz for some reason. We nearly have the Surf loaded, and the Surf is going to be likely enough to KO the Mandibuzz. It's a pretty bulky Pokemon. It lives on very low HP, but the Mandibuzz with Air Slash, its pacing is too slow. They're not going to be able to have the back-to-back moves quite yet. Back in comes the Roserade. We take 2 Air Slashes for the road, but are able to farm down. GG's. We've now made it to the final game of the video, and it is a pretty nice lead, as it is Roserade leading into an opposing Florges, and my opponent switches into a Galarian Moltres. I fire off my first Weather Ball Fire on 7, and they are going to be forced to shield that up. If you didn't know, Roserade has access to Dazzling Gleam, so that is not a move that my opponent was intent on no-shielding. And now, that fly aimed at the Roserade is going to be caught onto the fortress. I completely understand. That was a very tantalizing fly, given that I stayed in as long as I did. We are just going to overfarm with our fortress. They are going to switch out into their Florges, and unfortunately, I throw an alignment. I need to throw this Rock Tomb in the hopes that I can burn my switch timer, but I fall once again about a millisecond short of being able to switch out. I'm going to have to let the Chilling Water go, and in turn, let go of my fortress. I bring back in the Roserade. Roserade so quickly pacing that we are going to be able to make another Weather Ball Fire. Weather Ball Fire is going to get rid of the Florges. They realize there's not a whole lot of play for that Pokemon remaining, and in the back they've got an Incineroar, but the Incineroar throws on alignment. They're going to fire off a Brutal Swing. I have to make sure that I shield that up, because if they bring in the Galarian Moltres, I don't want to get KO'd by the sneaking Sucker Punches. And now I have this Surf. Surf not going to be shielded by the Galarian Moltres. They're putting their full hopes and dreams on the back of the Incineroar. I'm not sure if that's the play they want to make. The Surf is going to grab the shield. We're one Hex away. Does this Brutal Swing KO? Brutal Swing, very attack-weighted Pokemon is the Incineroar, not quite enough to KO, and we are going to make the final Surf. No shields remaining on my opponent's side means that this will be a good game. GG's to them. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Do I think Roserade is a pick that we all need to build and run in the Halloween Cup? To be honest, probably not. It does have a pretty interesting niche with not only quick pacing to fire damage, which can be useful in matchups such as Scizor and Fortress, but also the quickest possible pacing currently available in Pokemon Go to that very fire damage. It also has a very good matchup into Azumarill, and only takes neutral from Mud Slap, which is pretty much the entire cup when you really think about it. With all that being said, thanks once again so much for watching. I've been Shmeaty. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. See ya.